Good day, Africa, and welcome to another exciting edition of AAU Talks here on AAU TV. And my name is Kwesi Sam. I am with the Directorate of Research and Academic Planning here at the Association of African Universities. And you just don't forget that you can join the conversation via our social media platforms, AAU on Facebook, that is Association of African Universities, and AAU_67 on Twitter. Now, today on AAU Talks, we are looking at ways of improving crop yield in Africa in line with the African Development Bank's High Five strategies, which says that we need to feed Africa. And today is going to be interesting. We have one of our PhD fellows who is also a research fellow at Ruhr University in Bochum, Germany. And he is also one of our grantees at the Association of African Universities. And so today on AU Talks, we are going to stream live from Germany, where we have one of our PhD fellows who is going to help us understand the ways and means to improve crop yields in Africa. So specifically, we'll be looking at one of his PhD outcomes. He did a research work on biochar and compost application for improved crop yields in Africa. If you can hear me, Mr. Mensah, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, my brother.
Great. And how is Germany as well?
Germany is fine, and by God's grace, we are doing well.
Great. And academically, I know you are doing excellently well as well.
Yes, we are doing our best.
Wonderful. So welcome to AAU Talks here in AAU TV, and we are streaming live from our studios in Accra, Ghana.
Thank you so much, my brother.
All right. So today on AU Talks, we have all the African continent, the entire continent listening to you, and we want to look at some of the great outcomes that you, and then the research findings that you made out of your research on biochar and compost application for improved crop yield, most especially when the African Development Bank has it's also one of its strategies to improve crop yield in Africa to feed ourselves. And to begin with, we want to really understand your research topic or the research problem, that is the biochar and compost application. Why did you go into this, and why is this very important to us as Africans?
Thank you so much. Just like you have already highlighted, agriculture forms the mainstay of Africa's economy. And in Ghana, agriculture employs over 60% of the population.
Can you speak out a bit so we can hear you?
Yeah, so I was saying agriculture forms the mainstay of Africa's economy. Okay. And in Ghana, for instance, agriculture employs over 60% of the population. So Ghana is best described as the agrarian economy. Okay. Now, so we need to look at ways to help the farmers and also to improve crop yield. Now, talking about biochar, I would like to take you through how biochar came about, something brief about how biochar came about, and I will also explain what biochar means and how we can make it, and then now we can narrow down to the other questions that might arise. Now, biochar actually began the history, we call it terra preta. Now, terra preta was first discovered in South America in the Amazon forest. Okay. Now, what happened was that terra preta, which is also known as the Eldorado or the dark earth in Portuguese, what happened is that the people living in the infertile lands of the Amazon in the 1540s had to increase their food production. So that led to intensive agriculture, where the lands in the Amazon forest became very infertile. So what happened was that in as much as most of the fertility in most part of the Amazon forest had been depleted, there were also areas which were savanna, but those areas were found that there were some forests which were like islands growing in the midst of the savanna
Okay.
areas. So then researchers became curious. How come we have forests growing in the midst of savanna?
All right.
Then that means there should be something special that is causing the forest to grow in the midst of an infertile place. So now the discovery, what happened was that when they went to the Amazon forest, they discovered that that part of the savanna that was growing the forest had
Mm.
dark soil, and also they found remains of bones and black soil at that
Okay.
particular spot. Hello?
Yes, we are listening to you.
Yeah, so there were dark forests, sorry, there were dark soils at the spot where the forests were growing in the midst of the savanna,
Mm-hmm.
and there were also remains of bones and other stuffs. So now they realized that the people who once lived in the Amazon forest were were throwing their bones from the food they eat
Okay.
into that area, and they were burning and they were slashing.
Okay.
So now what happened was that the burning and the slashing of the bones and the remains from the leftovers
Mm-hmm.
now gave rise to what is called the
All
biochar,
right.
which is the terra preta.
Okay.
So more or less like um a black carbon.
Okay.
So now they link that to, okay, so this is the reason why the spots within the savanna is growing forest,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that the soil in that particular spot is more fertile than the surrounding areas.
Okay.
So that is what brought about
Okay.
biochar.
Because of the bones that were being thrown in that particular
But
spot.
that and they were
Okay.
burnt, and because the bones were being burnt and other residues from their daily activities that were burnt.
Mm-hmm.
So because it was burnt, it gave rise to carbon.
Okay.
Now, what is biochar then? Biochar is any living material
Mm-hmm.
or any living biomass that has been charred.
Okay.
When you say it has been charred, it means that it has been
Okay.
burnt. So you can make biochar if you have charcoal.
Mm-hmm.
If you take any biomass and you burn it and you get charcoal,
Mm-hmm.
it represents biochar.
Okay.
So the charcoal that we usually use qualifies to become a biochar. So it is just any living material, maybe compost
Okay.
or maybe wood, any living thing that is burnt
Okay.
becomes a biochar. So biological charred
Okay.
material,
Okay.
biochar.
Okay, that's really, really interesting. But let's really look at made mention of the soil component that really brought out this research process. But vis-a-vis what we have in Africa, what would be your overview of the soil composition that we have in Africa, and why do we think this will be very much relevant?
Thank you so much. That's a very brilliant question. Over over 25 or 30% of Africa's soil remain acidic.
Okay.
And in Ghana, especially in the rainforest areas
Hmm.
where we have a lot of the basic cations in the soil being washed away or leached because of the rainfall.
Okay.
So the soil at the end becomes acidic. Now, when the soil becomes acidic, there are so many problems associated with soil acidity.
Okay.
We can have problems with um, um, phosphorus fixation.
Okay.
We can have reduced microbial activity. We can have major nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium not being made available for plant use.
Use, yes.
It's acidic. So because of that, farmers are also constrained with buying let's say
Is it the chemical
the
fertilizers?
materials, the material that are supposed to be used to bring the soil up to a level that is not so acidic.
Okay.
I'm trying to use words so that everyone will understand.
Exactly.
So I don't want to sound too
Too
scientific.
technically, exactly. That would be very important.
Yeah, yeah. So usually the mechanism for turning acidic soil is called liming,
Okay.
where we use calcium carbonate and all that to lime the soil so that the soil will not become too acidic. But in Africa, especially for smallholder farmers, buying of this input become a problem. Most of them do not even have the financial resource to afford.
Or even the knowledge at all to know
So
the acidity content of the soil.
and all
Yeah.
that. So biochar can then be employed by the farmers. It can be adopted by the farmers to now turn acidic soil into an arable fields where they can use.
Okay. All right. So I think that is the main reason why this research process will be very much useful to Africa.
Yes, because also another case is where farmers will have to till the land and buy a lot of fertilizers and all that before they can increase crop yield.
Okay.
And here is the case they cannot afford. Basically, looking at the smallholder farmer and the income levels. So we are thinking that if you're able to adopt biochar, which um which is cheaper and more available at the farm scale, uh, the farmers can then use it to turn acidic soils into arable fields.
Okay.
For another issue here is that for instance, we can make biochar from any feedstock that is on the field. Example is corn husk,
Okay.
the maize husk. When after harvesting, it becomes more of a waste. They harbor pests and all that,
Yes.
and they become a waste for the farmer. Even and even the corn cob itself, and the farmers are wondering what they are going to use the corn cobs for, and they become more of environmental nuisance.
Okay.
So with biochar, they can turn that corn cob, which is a waste, into another material that can benefit the soil and also benefit the farmer.
Okay, that's very brilliant. But let's also look at the 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 terrain of the soil in Germany vis-a-vis what we have in Africa. Is it the same? And how is it possible for them to have improved crop yields than what we have in Africa?
Um, Basically, especially in temperate soils, we don't have a lot with what is called the leaching of basic cations.
Okay.
The basic cations are the calcium, the magnesium, the potassium, as well as the sodium. They are the basic cations, and they are able to reduce acidity.
Okay.
But because of high rainfall and because of the fact that most trees have been felled, and because we have a lot of
Deforestation in
deforestation
Africa, yeah.
in Africa, there's a lot of leaching. There's a lot of leaching, washing away of the topsoil nutrient. So they all deplete these basic cations that should buffer the soil to have a neutral pH or a near neutral pH. But in Africa, most of these are washed.
Okay.
But when you come to the temperate soils, because the rate of deforestation is
Low.
low,
Okay.
we don't have much of this basic cation being washed away. There's not that much problem with acidity of the soil. So more research, especially by Jeffrey, had advocated when he did the work and criticized biochar. He was of the opinion that biochar works more on tropical soils, not on temperate soils.
Okay.
The reason being that on tropical soils, most of the basic cations have been depleted and organic matter is even
Okay.
low. So we can use biochar, increase these basic cations, and increase also the pH, reduce acidity, and also store organic carbon for a longer period of time. Unlike in the temperate soils, where they don't have problem with organic matter depletion, they don't have problem with
Deforestation.
depletion of deforestation or depletion of the basic cations
Sure.
and all that. So he was of the opinion, the argument he did more of a research, and was like biochar works more in tropical soils, not on temperate
Okay.
soils. And the reason is what I've
Okay. So you
outlined.
think that biochar is really important and relevant to the African context, right? And that is the
Yeah,
way to go in
yeah,
improving our crop yields.
yeah. Especially when it is combined with mineral fertilizer
Okay.
in the Amazon forest. In order to test what this biochar can do, there was a research that was done by one man called Christoph
Okay.
Steiner at the University of Bayreuth. This is what he did. He wanted to see the slash and char technique by the Amazonians, because the Amazonians, when they farm a place, now they will slash and they will burn and they will use it again. Now, in order to test this, he established experimental plot, one with biochar, others with no biochar, and another plot with biochar with mineral fertilizer. Then there was another one with another one with only mineral
Okay.
fertilizer. This was the finding. There was bigger yield on the one on the charcoal or the biochar plus mineral
Okay.
fertilizer, and crop yield increased by 880% in comparison with the mineral fertilizer alone with no biochar.
Okay.
The reason here is that the biochar, because of the carbon that is provided by this particular biochar, because the biochar, let us put it in plain context, in African context, biochar is charcoal.
Okay.
To explain it, biochar is charcoal, but then you grind the charcoal. When you grind the charcoal, you reduce or you increase the surface area. Then now you apply it on the soil.
Okay.
So that is so let's put it like it is charcoal. Now when you apply it in the soil, it is able to store carbon for a very long period of time. And because of also the fact that the surface area had been increased because you grind it, it is able to hold a lot of nutrient for a very long period of time.
Okay.
And that when you apply the mineral fertilizer can now be retained on the soil for a long period of time. So you can use the land over and over
Again.
without the nutrient being depleted.
Okay.
Instead of you to move from that particular land because the fertility is depleted. And like what we used to do in shifting cultivation, you farm at a place where the soil get depleted, then you leave it for to fallow and go and farm at another place. But now, because of population increase, we don't have a lot of lands available.
Okay.
So the technique is that when you use biochar, you can use that particular land and use it again because the fertility is not depleted and the biochar is holding the nutrient for a very long period of time to be made available for the next crop. Another benefit here is that when you use the biochar and you apply water, because of the fact that the biochar has large surface area, it's able to hold on water for a long period of time to be made available for the crop. And also there's the soil structure which is improved.
Okay.
So research has shown that biochar works more on sandy soils
Okay.
because of the fact that the sandy soils have a lot of pore spaces. And so there's a lot of erosion and there is a lot of leaching of nutrients.
Okay.
But then when you apply biochar, it's able to bind these loose particles together. And so when you apply water, the water is being able to be made available for crop use, and also at the end tend to benefit the crop yield in the long term.
Okay. I am not an expert in agriculture, neither am I a farmer, but to situate the discussion for our viewers to understand in clear terms, back in the days when we used to study agricultural science, our basic knowledge is that when you farm, you leave, after harvesting your maize or whatever crops, even when you clear the farmland, you allow some time, the leaves will dry, and then we believe that once the leaves dry, they will add some nutrients to the soil. And then we will also add some kind of the farm waste and everything. You spread it over the soil surface for some time. And after a period, it would kind of add some nutrients and value to the soil. Is that the same concept that you are explaining, or is totally different?
Yeah, it's the same concept.
Okay.
It's the same concept. Like practically what you are, like more of green manuring,
Exactly.
and when you or when you slash, you don't throw the litter, you don't, but
Away.
you spread it.
Yes.
You don't throw it away, but you spread it on the soil surface, and because of that, even the soil temperature is improved.
Cool. Exactly.
Because it's improved because it becomes cool, and because when the soil temperature becomes too hot, there are some organisms that could not survive such high temperatures. So
Exactly.
at the end they die.
Okay.
So now, when you're able to do that, you cool the temperature and make it favorable or conducive for soil microorganisms and soil living organisms. And also, when you do that, you are trying to improve the soil moisture
Exactly.
instead of the moisture to be depleted, especially when the land is bare. More of the soil water is being washed
Washed away,
away,
the nutrients go off.
the nutrient go off, and all that. But then when you do with what you were talking about, it is the same concept with biochar.
Okay, that's amazing. So how do we get local farmers, especially, I know that right after school you would want to come back to Africa and share your knowledge with the local farmers and then the agricultural ministries on how we can buy into your product and make sure that we improve crop yields in Africa. But how would this knowledge be transferred to our local farmers?
Yeah, that's a very brilliant question. I must emphasize that there's biochar, though the level of adoption of biochar is not that much, but there is a lot of there's some work that is currently ongoing.
Okay.
University of Cape Coast is doing a work on how biochar can improve crop yield, and they're also in collaboration with the University of Ghana, and even at my department in Bochum
Okay.
at Royal University, my professor is currently having a project where in Tamale,
Okay.
in Tamale, in Burkina Faso, in Mali, where we are uh, trying to
Transfer the knowledge to the local.
transfer the knowledge to the people. Because in Tamale, for instance,
Okay.
it's serious to the extent that the water that they even use to grow their crops is a problem.
Okay.
And in Tamale, people use wastewater,
Exactly.
water that is coming from battles and all that. That's what people are using to irrigate crops. And so this biochar, as part of the project that my department in Germany is doing in Tamale, is to see how we can treat this wastewater with biochar.
Okay. All right.
And so they call it filter char. That is wastewater that has passed through a treatment with biochar. Then now we use it to irrigate the crops.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll
So
go for a short break, and then when we return, we'll really look at another area where we can increase crop production in Africa. Viewers, this is AU Talks here on AU TV, and today we are discussing various ways to improve crop production in Africa. And we have one of our research fellows who is joined us all the way from Germany, and he's just really helping us to discuss this issue and understand how we can really improve improve crop yield in Africa. Stay tuned after the break. This is still AAU Talks here on AAU TV, and today we have one of our research fellows who is in Ruhr University in Germany. He's joined us and we are discussing various ways to improve crop yields in Africa. Especially, he is sharing with us his knowledge in biochar and compost application to improve crop yield. Hello, Albert, are you still there? Great. So, Albert, I think you've shared enough with us some innovative ways of improving crop yields in Africa. And before we left for the break, we were discussing with us, or you were telling us some of the knowledge transfers that you are doing in Mali, in Accra, especially Tamale and Burkina Faso. So, if you can take it from there. Mm. Okay.
Scale. And that is another research gap that can also be taken. At the moment, farmers in northern region, I can tell you for a fact that just like I've told you about the project where they are using biochar to filter the wastewater so that they can use it now to irrigate. And there's research done on the irrigation water, the waste irrigation water, and also the water that has been filtered with biochar. There are research being done, and also the farmers are also being introduced. So there's that knowledge transfer that is currently ongoing, and but we think that not much is
needed.
yet to be done. Is needed because the not much is known, especially by the farmers. But then farmers are always looking for ways where they can improve their yield, and we are doing that. And I must clarify here that the we the best one of the best approaches to deal with the biochar issue is to combine it with either compost, or you can also combine with compost and mineral fertilizer. Yes, because the biochar itself, when you do the analysis on biochar, you realize that it lacks some nutrient like nitrogen. And biochar principally improves the soil physical chemical properties, which is the soil physical properties and the chemical properties. So, for instance, when you apply biochar, you are going to increase the soil structure. So that now you can, when you apply the mineral fertilizer can now be held on. So it is good to apply biochar with mineral fertilizer or compost. For instance, when you apply compost and biochar, because the biochar, so where the nutrient, like for instance, where there is the nutrient is being lacked in the biochar, now the compost is also supplying it. So it's something that should go in tandem, in one, alongside the other.
So how difficult is it for you or for researchers, especially in the field of agriculture, to really connect with the farmers and then share the knowledge that you have? That is one of the greatest challenges that we have on a continent. The researchers have the solution, but there is a big disconnect between them and the farmers. How is it difficult or easy for you?
Talking about that, I think most of this, one of the solution to deal with is the extension officers, because the researchers mostly are people not so much in touch with the farmers. It's the extension officer or the extension agriculture extension agent that are usually in touch with the farmers. So and the knowledge transfer is this way: is the from the research institution to the agriculture extension agent, then from the agriculture extension agent to the farmer. So there should be that connection between the agriculture extension agent. More of workshops will have to be done, well, on biochar and what it can do. More workshops will have to be done to train more of the extension officers and the agriculture extension agent, for instance, so that they can now also go to the field and transfer this knowledge to the farmers. Then another issue is also for an easy hands-on approach, training for the farmers.
Yes.
Something, for instance, I was telling you that one of the simplest way to make biochar um, is to, like I said, that you when you just gather any biomass, you just set the biomass on fire, then you cover it completely, but then make sure that it doesn't turn into ashes. So what you can do is to block oxygen. So you cover it completely so that you block oxygen. When there's a lot of oxygen, there's a lot of combustion, and when combustion is increased, now everything will burn and it will turn into ashes. But that is not what you want. So you cover it to block the oxygen. Then you allow the biomass to char by the heat.
Okay.
So and the next thing, another thing that can be used is also the stove or the retor stand. Stoves and retor stand have been made for this.
Okay.
So more of the easy hands-on training should be made at the farm scale level.
Okay.
From the university, we can get more of the farmers, especially if you are living in Cape Coast University, for instance, people around Kwapro, how we can go there, hands-on something, and we use the resources that are available
Within the
for
location.
within the environment, and see how we can improvise that so that it can be adopted.
Okay. Yeah, exactly, because that is where we seem to have much of the problem, that the community services and then also the industry and academia linkages is a bit weak. But looking at even the processes that you're explaining, people who have been to school, it's a bit of a difficulty understanding the processes. And what about farmers who have never been to school, or who don't have any knowledge, or who have never been to any forms of training or institutions? How would this be easy for them to adopt?
Yes, like I was saying, for me, I had always stand for what in management, what we call the bottom-up approach in
Approach.
management.
Okay.
I had always been a number one advocate of bottom-up approach and participatory approach to every issue.
Okay.
And that, like I was saying, we need to go to the farmers themselves, get them. I once attended a workshop in ISA at University of Ghana, where there's some people. There was a man, I'd forgotten the name, but he brought some of the stoves for making this biochar, where you block oxygen, and there are videos and all that are also available on the internet. So most of this can be sent to the farmers with workshops and working happening on the field,
Okay.
where we train the farmers with videos, and also make use of the resources available within the locality. And we do more of this training using videos. If we can get power, we get power, get farmers, make poster, get the farmers, let them come speak the local language,
So that they understand better.
so that they understand, show them videos and put them into groups and let them practice. and get the hands-on experience. So then before they finish or they leave that particular workshop, they would have been abreast with the issues. And no matter how effective the solution is going to be, if you have not sent it to the farmers, it becomes more of it. We don't achieve the aim.
Okay.
So we need to send this to the
To the
farmers
farmers.
and make it simple through workshops and at the farm scale, with videos, with and regular workshops and all that happening at the farm scale,
Okay.
basically.
Okay, that's brilliant. But Albert, let's also look at this from another perspective, especially with the crop yield. Biochar, is it? I want to find out more specifically if it is specific to some crop product or any crop product at all. It's okay to use the biochar.
So far, I haven't come across any crop that biochar cannot work on.
Okay.
Maybe I'm here to find out. I worked on biochar and compost. I worked on biochar, then alone, see how biochar alone can increase the crop yield and the crop growth.
Okay.
And I also combine it with biochar with compost to see if these two, how are these two going to work. Then I also did one with no amendment.
Okay.
And I grew maize, one which is hybrid, which is the Obatampa, which we usually know in Ghana.
Okay.
And there was another one which was called in Cape Coast. It was named as Ewifumpe,
Okay.
which is local to the people. And at the end, it was marvelous that if you see on the field how the crops were growing, but what was more manifesting was the compost and the biochar. Because you realize that the leaves were becoming bigger, the length were increasing, the girths were increasing, and at the end the dry matter weight also increasing. All the compost and biochar one, vis-a-vis that of the biochar alone, and also the one with no with no amendment. And I
Okay.
know that there's a work that I'm actually reviewing, which they used to grow. So I grew with maize. And there's one man called Oguntude. Oguntude had also used to grow maize in Ghana.
Okay.
And the results were brilliant. And at University of Cape Coast, there's some research that had also been done using it to grow lettuce.
Okay.
Lettuce. At the moment, I have a paper that I'm supposed to review, where the master student used biochar and the same treatment I'm talking about, biochar and compost, and he also applied mineral fertilizer in some cases, and he used it to grow lettuce at the pot scale and also at the field scale.
Okay.
And it worked. And I also know of one PhD man who finished his PhD also from Germany. He used biochar with most of this same combination that I'm giving to grow cowpea.
Okay.
And some works have also been done where biochar was used to grow cassava.
Okay.
So all these things can come from research. We need to explore and see which crops that it will work on. But so far, biochar had worked on all the crops that that have been used on them.
Okay. What about cash crops?
Cash crops like
Cocoa,
for instance, yeah, cashew. Yeah, that's a very brilliant question. Yeah, I think that is also one area that we can look at. So far, coming from the hypothesis that biochar works on all crops. That is a hypothesis
all
that we
right.
have.
Okay.
So we can now just use this hypothesis, put it
to test.
to test,
Okay.
and see indeed if this hypothesis hold true. If this hypothesis holds true that biochar works for all crops. So some have done on cassava, have done on maize, lettuce, and other crops that have already. Let us also look at: is it going to work on cocoa? Is it going to work on cashew? Is it going to work on
rubber?
coconut?
Yes.
On rubber? So these are research gaps
Okay.
that we can explore as far as the biochar research is concerned, and see how we can upscale this technology to
Exactly.
farmers.
Okay. That's amazingly. Let's also look at, maybe I'm a local farmer listening to you, a traditional farmer. I don't have any knowledge. I don't have any farm implement. Can you lead us through the process, educating us how we can really go through the process of coming up with biochar, and then how it has been applied on the farm? What must be? What are the rules? What are the ins? What are the do's and don'ts to ensure that we improve our crop yield?
um, First, like I had already mentioned, in terms of the making, they use a stove, and the technicians for that particular stove can take you how the stove is supposed to be used. But basically, what is supposed to be done when you are using it is, the process is called pyrolysis.
Okay.
Pyrolysis is trying to heat the biochar at a specific temperature, and but then you can, some go as far as high as 600 degrees Celsius, others go like 300. Research are also being done on which temperature does biochar produce best results.
Okay.
So some are trying on 300 degrees Celsius, others are trying on 500, others are also trying on 600 and all that. But it shouldn't go beyond 1000 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
That is one thing. Then also the feedstock. The feedstock is the material that we can use to produce this particular biochar. We can use corn cob, we can use rice husk, we
Okay.
can use a corn husk, we can use basically everything that is found um, from the field. We can also even use compost itself and make it
Okay.
a biochar and burn it, manure and all that. So the properties of biochar depend on the feedstock from which it was made.
Okay.
But in all, when you are making it, make sure you block oxygen so that it doesn't become ashes. So at farm scale, like I was telling you, it is more or less like you are making a charcoal, just like the people who know how to make charcoal. Just
Okay.
like, yeah, it is the same process.
Same process. Okay.
The same process of making a charcoal. When you go to CSIR, and especially soil research in Kwadaso, they produce a lot of this
This
biochar,
biochar.
and they sell it to farmers at a very affordable price. And they also do these trainings to at the farm scale for the farmers. So the process is just like you are making a charcoal.
Charcoal. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that is, or you can use the stove or the retort stand, where which is made specifically for making the biochar, and but then you block oxygen and you reduce oxygen so that it doesn't become ashes at the end.
Right. And
Then in
okay.
terms of application, in terms of the application, you can mix it with you can do a spot application. You can do spot application where you apply the biochar at the spot where the crops are going to be grown,
Okay. So it's
which is
not
the
on the
spot
entire
application.
farmland.
Yeah, I'm giving some of the methods of application.
Okay.
So you can do a spot at where the crop is going to be grown, and which is more or less like that. Then you can also do um, even distribution on the field.
Okay.
So you apply the biochar when you get it. They are in a tank. You apply it on the field at calculated amount. Then you mix it. You mix it with the soil and spread it evenly with a rake.
Okay.
With a rake on the soil. Then you do that before now you do the planting.
Okay.
The other thing you can also do is to mix this biochar and soak it um in a solution of water and urea fertilizer, for instance.
Okay.
So like I had already mentioned, the biochar, depending on the feedstock from which it was made, might lack some nutrients. So you might want to enhance those nutrients that it is lacking by addition of this mineral fertilizer like urea. So you soak it in a solution of water with urea. So before now you apply it on the field.
Okay.
Then the other thing you can also do is to mix it with the compost. Then now you spread it evenly on the field and use rake to spread it evenly. on the field or apply it at the spot where the crops are going to be grown.
Are there any side effects?
There are some research that are also trying to punch holes
into biochar
the biochar
application.
Okay. That is the beauty of research.
Exactly.
You need to also come up with some gaps but then you need to put your gaps that you have identified, put it into test.
Exactly.
Come out with your findings and let's see whether your findings are valid. But until you have made research, whatever you have in the mind is hypothesis.
Exactly.
And hypothesis can either be true or false.
Of course, yeah.
The best way to disapprove or to prove your hypothesis
is to just test it. So,
so like one of the setbacks or the critics for biochar is what Jeffrey did in 2007. 2017, where he said biochar is being exaggerated, and that it doesn't work in all soils.
Okay.
But then it works on tropical soils, but it doesn't work on temperate soils.
Okay.
Because the temperate soils are already nutrient rich. But then biochar works better on nutrient deficient soils.
Okay.
And others are also saying that biochar doesn't work on all soils. It works more on sandy soils. And in my research that I did, I came to also conclude that the biochar works more on nutrient deficient soils and more on acidic soils than the others.
So we need a lot of work to be done to really ascertain the gaps and all right. But then before I finally let you go, can you share with us your recommendations? What do you have for the African government? What do you have for the institutions finally?
Hello, I lost you on the way.
Yes, I'm asking, before I finally let you go, what are some of your recommendations? What will you share with the governments in Africa and then these agric institutions that we have?
I think I will not talk much. Much is to be done as far as agricultural production in Ghana is concerned.
Okay.
We cannot in Africa. Africa is mainly an agrarian economy.
Exactly.
But then much is yet to be done. There should be more funding and subsidies to the farmers. I'm talking about this because when you go to developed countries like Germany, what happens is that Germany gives special funds to disadvantaged areas disadvantaged areas where agriculture is the major economic and the social factor.
Okay.
So special funds are made available for them. And Germany, 80% of Germany's land is into agriculture. So much.
Hello. All right. So we lost Albert on the line, and we have been speaking to Mr. Albert K. Mensah. He is a fellow, a research fellow at the Roha University in Germany, and we have been discussing ways to improve agricultural crop yield in Africa using biochar, and it has been insightful. I have learned a lot of things. I think Albert is back on the line. Albert, can you hear us?
Yes, please.
Great.
I lost you.
Exactly. Welcome back, Albert.
Thank you so much. So I can go
Yes,
on?
Albert, continue. Yes.
Yeah. So I ended at where government institutions need to do a lot to fund and provide a lot of subsidies to the farmers. Which is very important. And I've given you the case for Germany, how they help disadvantaged communities that where agriculture is a major economic and social factor. The other issue is we need to pump more money into research. I mean, every country that loses sight of what research offers has a lot to lose. More has to be pumped into research and make sure that more of the research, like most of the gaps that have been mentioned now, are done, and how we can now make this this technology available for the farmers.
Okay.
And then, more importantly, not that all the research is just done, because when you go to the universities, a lot of research have been done and they are being kept on the shelves.
Exactly.
But then government, with devoid of political ecology, should move to implementation of research findings and recommendations.
All right.
And I tell you that the best way to turn this continent around is to rely on research findings and recommendations by professors, because that is, they hold a tenet to sustainable development. So the recommendations have been made. It is simple. Recommendations have already been made.
Okay.
Implement.
Okay. All right. I can see your passion in there, and we'll have a second show where we'll be discussing funding for agricultural sector in Africa, and that is where we'll be trying to connect also with the African Development Bank, which has a lot of passion when it comes to agricultural production in Africa. Thank you so much for joining us from Germany and sharing your knowledge with us on biochar and compost application to improve crop yield in Africa. And we know that we'll come back to you again for more insights and more knowledge. Thank you so much and have a good day in Germany. All right.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure speaking to you.
All right. But I believe that right after your studies, you come back to Africa to support the agriculture sector as well.
We are always willing to contribute our quota in best ways possible to see to it that Africa becomes a better place for
No,
everyone.
I want a yes answer. All right. So viewers, this has been AAU Talks here on AU TV. And then today we've been discussing how to improve crop yields in Africa using biochar and compost application. And we have been speaking to Mr. Albert K. Mensah, who is a research fellow at the Ruhr University in Germany. He was also a student of the University of Cape Coast and then Kenyatta University. My name is Chrissy Sam. Thanks for watching, and this is AU TV.